Alright, here's another attempt at doing one of these practice streams so that I can get used to just talking into a mic without actually addressing anybody. Since I'm so fucking bad at it, and this is just practice, you probably don't want to watch this. But if for some reason you ignore your instincts and you ignore my warning and you do decide you want to watch this, I guess I shall be getting on. The topic today is the controversy that happened last Saturday on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. with the Covington Catholic Church kids versus the Black Israeli Nationals, Black Israeli Hebrews, whatever the fuck they want to call themselves, and that Nathan Phillips guy, that Vietnam veteran Native American who was disrespected by the evil racists, and how the media blew it completely out of proportion for a purpose, and everybody that jumped on the bandwagon is basically just being led along and manipulated because of it. So, getting to it. I suppose the best place to start is just to say that the whole thing is fucking a bunch of nonsensical bullshit. A whole bunch of people that are eager to jump on a bandwagon and virtue signal and work to their confirmation biases on Saturday after this fucking footage came out. Did exactly that. They jumped on the goddamn bandwagon. They condemned this kid for smiling and standing there, as though smiling and standing there is some great fucking crime or great act of violence or act of racism or whatever their fucking nonsensical justification was. It will be whatever they're projecting onto their political enemies that they actually think they want to do themselves. So what the useless dog shit fucking media said was that these kids were there to attend the March for Life rally, which was the previous day, and then they went back there to harass the I forget what the name of this rally was, but there was a whole bunch of leftist, race-crazed fucking morons there, including this Nathan Phillips character. Now, the media said that this group of Trump supporters went up to this Nathan Phillips guy, surrounded him, and then started, taunting him, mocking him, talking shit, smirking at him, which, again, it apparently is so evil that I would imagine that after they get the guns away from us next, they're going to demand tactical assault smirk control. It's fucking stupid, useless, cocksucking commie, you loser pieces of fucking garbage. Anyway, so they said all that. It turned out it was a bunch of lies, of course, because the media hasn't been able to tell the truth in the last 50 years, even if they had to. A lot of people are talking about it. It's a big fucking, it's a big deal. Everybody in mainstream media is talking about some aspect of it, whichever portion of it which confirms to their confirmation biases. Likewise, internet media, where, the real shit is at, they've been talking about it a long time, too. And I'm going to talk about it as well, but I'm going to talk about it a little differently. I'll go into a little bit about the situation, although I'm sure everybody knows about it, but I'll just give you my short take on it. But what I really think was happening is this was an intentional, planted distraction so that the media wouldn't have to talk about a few other things that are going on. So I guess we'll just get right into it. This Nathan Phillips fella, which isn't his real name, it turns out, who was purported to be the Vietnam vet that was surrounded and taunted and thought, and as per him giving an interview to CNN, was under threats of violence by these evil Nazi racist Trump supporters that were trying to hurt him, is a complete liar. This guy is completely full of shit. He's not even a Vietnam vet. He lied. If you pay attention to what he said in those various interviews on CNN and other garbage media places, he said, I was a vet during the Vietnam era, or during Vietnam times, which I guess is his way of trying to get out of the whole stolen valor idea. CNN and a whole bunch of other media organizations, of course, reported that he was a Vietnam vet, but he wasn't. He served in the... He is technically a vet, but he wasn't a Vietnam vet. He served during the Vietnam War, but he was in the Marine Reserves. And he worked primarily in Nebraska and California, and he worked as an electrician, and it seems that his primary duty was fixing various kinds of refrigerators on the Marine Corps bases. So he did that. And that's actually totally fine service. I don't want to take away from him serving for that regard. It's not any better or worse than being a Vietnam vet. But it is another instance of the fucking media, and this cocksucker himself, by not correcting them, lying about the whole goddamn thing. In addition to that, he lied about being something he called a recon ranger during Vietnam times, which is kind of funny because he was a Marine, so force recon would have been a possibility, but He wasn't force recon, he was an electrician in the reserves. And the Rangers is an Army thing. The Marines don't even do that. So I think that is one of the first red flags people, when they started looking at what this guy was saying, started to realize that it was probably bullshit. He, of course, lied about the Covington Catholic kids. They did not come up to him, surround him, and start taunting him. He, in fact, walked up to them. And the reason he said he walked up to them, eventually he admitted it, but he changed his story a few times afterwards. So, no one approached him, no one surrounded him, no one said anything racist to him. He said one of the things that really triggered him off was they said build the wall, which firstly is not illegal and not racist and not a problem anyway. A wall is an object that you use to keep people or things or animals or any of that stuff in and out of places where you don't want them to go. I'm sure there's a wall around this cocksucker's house, just like there's a wall around every other fucking jackass liar in both the media and intelligentsia and the political world. They say a wall is evil and immoral, but not only do they live behind multiple walls in their house walls, but likewise, usually, walls around their fucking properties, and likewise, walls around their whole fucking neighborhoods. Alright, so basically the whole thing started to come off when people started posting the video of the kid kind of smiling at the guy while the guy beats the drums. Now, if you looked around at a few other videos, if you watched the whole thing or you found other angles, you'd find, once again, that this guy, he lied about everything that he said. The kids didn't walk up to him. They weren't saying build the wall, even though there's nothing wrong with saying build the wall. The kids were there sightseeing after the March for Life, and they were being taunted by the black Israelis, which are a bunch of far-left racist morons that are basically just running around trying to agitate and cause problems wherever they go, because that's what they do. It's how they do politics. They're just jackass, racist pieces of garbage that run around being jackass, racist pieces of garbage. They were saying build the wall, and amongst other things like look at these dirty-ass crackers, and a bunch of nonsense like that, towards these kids in order to try to taunt them into, actually getting into a fight. So what actually happened was there was a whole bunch of black racists there taunting these kids that were just walking through and sightseeing, and these kids actually did a pretty good job not getting involved in the whole fucking thing. Eventually, after they started doing their school chants just to try to drown out the constant set of racism around them, this dipshit Nathan Phillips cocksucker decides he's going to be the white knight that he has to be, which actually he turns out he's an agitator, to come in and save the poor black Israelis from the evil white supremacist Trump supporters saying build the wall. Which, of course, again, was like every aspect of that as a lie. And then Nathan Phillips basically admitted it too, because he changed his story shortly after he said that when it was proven that he walked up to them. So later he said then he, since there was animosity going on between the Covington kids and the black supremacist adults, that he got in between them so that they wouldn't, so that they would stop fighting. But he seemed to have a whole lot more zeal for going after the kids and banging a goddamn drum fucking half an inch to 2 inches away from the kid's face in order to stop this apparent fight between four racist assholes that were trying to start a fight and a bunch of kids that were singing school chants. So, once again, he was lying. Showed it, he was a liar. Then he said that he just got in between them so that they wouldn't continue to go towards one another, and he wanted to walk through them so that it would break it up and ease tensions, which of course is nonsense. That's not the way he did it. Walked up to the kids, yelling a bunch of the shit that he was yelling. The cohorts who were with him saying a bunch of racist crap like "Go back to Europe" and "We've been here a million years." Definitely, that sounds like that's something that they were trying to tool down hostility rather than frickin' ramp it up. But the kid still didn't fucking take it. The kid stood there and smiled at it, and then the kid has been condemned as an evil racist for it. Alright, so that's the long and short, the gist of it. Everybody probably already knows that. What is interesting about that is, I think that this was a plant. The media desperately needed a distraction from some of the other stories that were going on in the world, and this is what it gave them. And the reason I think that is because not only is it perfect timing, it was worded perfectly. Everybody that had to be in on the spin was in on the spin before it started to going around so that they could catch the jump. And now it's basically so large a thing that it's distracting everybody. Even right-wing media is talking about this rather than anything else. So let's going into why I think he was a plant. He's been a political activist and an agitator. He was definitely doing it in 2015, 2017, and again in 2019. It seems what he does is he goes around to places where he knows the media is going to be. He uses his Vietnam veteran status and his Native American status as politically correct shields, and he goes out and he agitates things to try to get sound bites and video for the media so the media can blow whatever the thing is out of proportion and give him a bunch of fucking sound bites. That seems to be what his role in it is, and I believe that he was doing this today under the specific and direct orders of a whole bunch of different varieties of higher-ups in corporate media and the political world. And the reason I think that he was doing that was to distract them specifically from Pelosi and Schumer losing the propaganda war with Trump, so the shutdown will not go away. Basically, everything that these people are trying to say, like, oh, it's Trump's fault that the 800,000 employers aren't working and the walls are immoral and evil and all that stuff, contrasting completely with things that both of them have said many times in the past, along with all the rest of their stupid Democratic fucking political caucus. They were trying to push all this nonsensical Linsky about how it was evil and bad and immoral, and Trump was just cutting him off at every turn. Pelosi tried some political maneuvering by telling Trump that he shouldn't give the State of the Union address in the House because the shutdown made it so that it would be hard to to make sure that it was secure and that no violence would happen there, which of course was nonsense. She didn't ask the Secret Service or any of the fucking security apparatus or agencies if that was the case. She just made it up and said it. And while the media was jerking off about how great they thought, how deep a fucking political move they thought it was, Trump did the same thing to her by canceling her plane while she was on the bus to go to that plane to take a trip around the world and do a bunch of different various political things. So Trump completely outmaneuvered her and is winning against these two dipshits and all their fucking ridiculous allies and their fucking media lapdogs in the propaganda war to get a wall built and obfuscate their wall is immoral nonsense. So they had this issue going, and they absolutely needed a distraction from that. And I believe they did get the distraction, and they used it last week, and that was that BuzzFeed news story where anonymous sources, once again, deep within the government or a large law enforcement agency, told two dickless fucking BuzzFeed reporters that they have documents which suggest that Trump told Cohen to lie to Congress about the Russia dealings. This thing that I put on screen right now is Mueller's office, that stupid cocksucker Mueller. He sent that Friday night, he sent one of his spokespeople out to basically say, no, this is not right. So they used this kind of fake news in order to try to distract away from losing against Trump. And they ended up just being stupid enough to, once again, dig themselves into a complete hole and get stuck in it. So then this was turned into fake news. It was the narrative was turning around on them, so they weren't talking about impeachment so much anymore as like, uh-oh, we fucked this up. So they needed another distraction. Because it completely backfired. This Phillips character gave them just that. Just like he did when Bernie Sanders was running against Hillary Clinton, and they used him at that pipeline demonstration in South Dakota just to get up to distract the Sanders supporters away so that they wouldn't notice that Hillary Clinton was stealing the election. And again later in 2017 when they were just trying to keep plying on and keep these people involved and interested, because the second these SJW types lose interest in this sort of thing and then they go to dick around on their iPhone or whatever it is, these people instantly lose whatever power they had over the outrage mob on Twitter that they had. They have to keep them engaged, and this is how they're doing it. The bigger thing that I think they're trying to distract from with all of these bullshit fake news stories, all this twisting and manipulating, and something that nobody in MSN has really even mentioned, is the testimony of James Baker. James Baker was the former FBI general counsel. He was the head of their office, so he was basically the FBI's main lawyer. And he testified in Congress and pretty much admitted that the FBI got this infamous Still dossier from which the MUH RUSSIA thing came from, which can be traced back to Hillary Clinton through Perkins Coie and Fusion GPS from multiple sources. So basically, he said, while being questioned, he said a lot of stuff, but he exposed that the whole cabal was that if they get this dossier, which no individual agency really took much credit in except for the CIA, because John Brennan was pushing on it. So he gave it to Harry Reid, they gave it to John McCain, they gave it to a few different journalists, they gave it to a bunch of different sources, so that when it was brought through into the FBI wouldn't be like, oh, this is just one maybe reliable source. If it's coming through 6 or 7 different sources, then the FBI would be more likely to look at it and say, maybe there's something here because we're getting this from multiple people. But it turns out that he also admitted that they didn't go through any of the normal intelligence or investigative apparatus in the FBI. There was no Woods procedure or any of that going on, because all this information was gathered and given it through the higher-ups. It didn't touch the rank and file FBI at all, because they would probably look at it and say, this is completely unverifiable and dog shit. It went through the upper echelon because all of those people apparently were controlled and given various rewards for their participation in this stupid cover-up for the Hillary Clinton and then frame job for President Trump by getting money from Terry McAuliffe in McCabe's case, or in Stroke's case, his wife got a a job as the head investigator for the SEC, which is a 6-figure salary itself, and also, you know, gives them power over the financial sector, and so on and so forth. Everybody was paid off in some way. James Baker basically admitted that. He admitted that it went through all these different sources in order specifically to give them a reason to give them a reason to surveil Trump and justify either writing a letter dictating that if the DOJ could indict a president, he should be indicted so that he can be impeached, or to give his cabinet a reason to invoke the 25th Amendment. He basically admitted that. He didn't quite go that far to say, because he's still a lawyer, so he hid it behind a bunch of Washington, D.C. intelligentsia talk. But he basically blew the lid wide open. Now, the reason nobody's hearing about this is because all these stupid media distraction stories are not telling you about it. Because if they were telling you about it, not only would they not be doing their job because they're just a lapdog for the Democrats and for the establishment Republican rhinos, but then they would know that the deep state is a real thing, that the whole fucking MUH Russia is a con job, and that everybody basically lied to them and continues to lie to them. And they can't have that. They can't have people actually knowing what's going on. They wouldn't. That's just not right. So, this Covington Catholic thing, along with the other fake news stories and all that I mentioned, is trying to hide a lot of things, but I believe this James Baker thing is one of the things right at the center of it. And so, this Covington Catholic thing has even distracted the right-wing media, because the right-wing media was talking about all of those other stories, and they're really talking about this Covington Catholic thing, and not James Baker, which normally they would really be talking about James Baker. I think that this was a plant, and it's just like what Project Veritas exposed when they made that video showing Bob Kramer, who was a big Hillary Clinton campaign bigwig, who's a political analyst who ran a propaganda company which contracted for the DNC and specifically Clinton, admitting that they were planting people in Trump rallies and Sanders rallies so they could act up and agitate the people in the rallies, and the media could capture it and spin it for the purposes of propaganda. Bob Kramer admitted all kinds of things along this line, but he specifically said, what we're doing is we put plants in certain places, especially at rallies and protests, so they can rile people up, they can agitate, and then get the media to spin so they can talk about whatever they want. In addition to that, Kramer and others working for him, like this Fovell guy, was shown in the Project Veritas video talking about vote rigging, voter fraud, and media manipulation using these same tactics. And right here, the quote has him saying, Bob, which is Kramer, got a hold of our guys who did the original insertions back in 2000-2004 campaigns against Bush, where they were inserting people and interrupting his fundraisers and rallies. And so, just when the media needs a distraction from Pelosi and Schumer losing, just when the media needs a distraction from the BuzzFeed story being completely fake news, and just when the media needs a distraction from Baker basically exposing the whole fucking thing, this comes out where nothing that was purported to happen by the guy who was apparently the victim and all of the media that was there happened the way that it said it did. So people jumped on a bandwagon and got so freaked out and crazy that everybody is distracted from those other stories and they're only talking about this one. I think that's kind of interesting. And kind of telling. And I think since we've seen it happen a bunch of times before, this Project Veritas is a direct evidence of them doing specifically that, I think it goes a long way in showing that this is one of the huge problems that are going on there. So, the story was a fake, it was completely a plant. The media and DNC tried to stop the bleeding and distract from stories which are actually hurting them by making this bullshit up and having the guy that perpetrated the whole thing, this Nathan Phillips character, lie about the whole goddamn event. And we're all still falling for it. The hey look over there tactic is a very, very potent one, and one that continues to be effective. Oh yes, and likewise, there's more evidence of collusion going on too. This is an excerpt from the Podesta files, which WikiLeaks released, and it shows a specific example of when in the people that were working for Hillary Clinton's campaign were talking about New York Times and at this time political journalist named Maggie Haberman and how they would use her to plant stories and spin stories and all that stuff. So there's a bunch of evidence going through a whole bunch of different ways where they do this shit all the time, and this is another example of it. And it is being done to distract. That's why, well, aside from practice, I wanted to make this video or do this stream so I could at least talk about it and say, hey guys, they're using this to distract us. We really should be paying attention to not only this because the media deserves to be raked over the coals because over this stupid lying bullshit, but also we need to remember the things they're trying to distract us from. Otherwise, it'll be successful and it'll win. And in addition to that, there's been a number of times, I just pulled out two of them. The article on the left was from a site called Media Trackers, and the article on the right was from Salon. I think it was Salon. So these are not far-right sources, and especially with Salon, where they admit in both of these cases that a bunch of journalists get together, they talk about what kind of stories they want to do, who they should be demonizing, who they should be defending, and which way they should be spinning things and manipulating it for their political purposes. In both of these cases, and this is only 2 examples of fucking, I remember dozens that I've read about over the years, where they've caught media types getting together and doing exactly that. So, if there's all this evidence of the media doing this all the time in the past, in this circumstance where the timing is just perfect and just coincidentally perfect enough in order to distract from these other things, is it possible? No, is it better than possible? Is it fucking probable that that's exactly what this stupid thing is? I contend that absolutely that's what it is, and that's my evidence for why this is a plant, why this whole fucking stupid thing is bullshit, and why the distraction game is still working. But there actually is hope, because though the distraction game is still working in right-wing, left-wing, center, etc. and so forth media, and especially the dominant leftist establishment mass media are only talking about this thing, but because it was shown to be fake news, and even though a bunch of people's confirmation biases is still subjecting them to the necessity of delusion in order to keep believing this ridiculous narrative, people are still kind of figuring out that it's bullshit. And though that people are figuring out that it's bullshit and they're staying on it and they're doubling down and they're projecting and that they're lying as they're doing other things that they always do, people are becoming more and more red-pilled to just the exact nature of, probably not the distraction yet, I don't think they know about that, but certainly the way that the spin and narrative works, that the media hasn't operated in good faith for decades. They're not operating in good faith now. They're a propaganda arm for the establishment political wings of the Democrat and Republican Party, and specifically the Democrat Party, because that's where the fucking money is. Likewise, the same reason why the Democrats are moving to the left more and more is because that's where the money is. Now, Democrats used to go after unions and all that sort of thing because there was a whole bunch of money in those manufacturing and what is now called the Rust Belt, and that's how they would finance their political campaigns and political operations. As the Democrats got their way and started to fucking corporatize and overregulate to the point where a bunch of businesses left, so we lost a bunch of jobs, the Rust Belt fell, and they're not able to get quite as much money through their public works, into union dues, into political cabinet donations scheme that they were using, so that they're running out of money. Now the money is in tech. Now the money is in Silicon Valley and similar things. It's in Twitter and Facebook and all those fucking tech billionaires that suddenly were given massive windfalls initially started by the government, and every one of them was initially funded by DARPA grants. And now those people are the ones who are donating millions and billions of dollars to the Democrat and Republican apparatus and the media apparatus, and they're buying them all up and such and so forth in order to keep pushing it. So because the tech types just happen to generally be more likely or a higher probability to come down on the left side and be more easily manipulated by emotional thinking, that those people are so far left that the Democrats are matching them in order to keep up, because that's where the money is, and they need money in order to do all of the various nefarious criminal things that they want to do by controlling the government and taking things over. So I guess that's good, because that's a thing that we get to look forward to and have to deal with for fucking ever. But I guess there's no way around it. All you can really do is point it out, try your damnedest to not get involved and fall for the fucking stupid bullshit tactics anyway, and point it out when you do see it and talk shit about those who do it, so that you can use counter-Alinsky to ridicule them and their stupid, ridiculous, corrupt movement into oblivion, so that it eventually has some probability to stop. I think those are the things that you have to do, and that's the thing that I'm trying to do now, in addition to speaking into the mic and practicing on that. And with that, I have exhausted everything that I generally have to say about this topic, so I guess now that I have to decide to move on and try to fill up a little bit more time, so I go a full half an hour or just stop here. I think I'm going to try to find some other topic, but bitch about it is normally I try to think of a few other topics beforehand, but I didn't think of any this time, so I'm completely winging it, and when I reference back to my mind to see the other thing that I should talk about, I come up with a blank. Fucking nothing. Which, interestingly enough, nothing was the subject of the last fucking stream that I did, because I couldn't come up with any ideas, so I figured I would just be extremely meta and talk about nothing. But now I'm just kind of talking and saying nothing at all, just wasting time so that I can try to delay and stall, so that I can give my mind time to come up with something to say about things by just rambling and saying nothing. Saying that I'm saying things is explicitly a stupid, weak, useless tactic to delay, but it's one that I'm using. Although I'm not finding any efficacy here, because even though I'm delaying and saying nothing and blotting, I'm not coming up with anything. So I guess in that regard, since I'm not coming up with anything to say and talk about, I will just shut the fucking stupid thing down. So Once again, this was a practice stream. If you did, for some reason, ignore your instincts and common sense and my advice and listen to the whole thing, perhaps maybe I practiced well enough so that I got something out. But regardless, if you did watch it, understand that this whole thing is a distraction and you should stop falling for it. And with that, I bid you adieu.